ADHD family, this is Yakini coming to you from ADHD Love. Today we have another episode of ADHD Love Parent Talk, and today I have my guest Meg, who I am very excited to talk about. She is a parent of a little girl, and she's gonna talk about her experiences with ADHD and then being a parent who has ADHD. So I'm very excited to have her on the show. So welcome, Meg. Thank you for joining me today.
Hi, I'm so happy you're having me. I'm I'm a 29-year-old mom. I have ADHD, and I've known I've had ADHD since I was a kid. I work full-time from home, so I'm a full-time mom, a full-time wife, a full-time employee. So I have a lot going on.
Yeah, so it's been a balance, I'm sure, for you, throughout your life. So tell the audience, when were you officially diagnosed? When did you know you had ADHD?
When I was a kid, I know that ADHD displays itself differently in girls than it does boys, but I happen to have some of the hyperactive traits along with the, inattentive traits, which is more typical for girls. And my mom has a brother who has ADHD, but he was diagnosed, back in the 80s. Okay. They just put him on Ritalin, and, that's all she wrote. So my mom knew what it looked like. And I was about 10 years old whenever, I think that's probably about fifth grade, whenever, you really have to start trying on tests and stuff and, actually paying attention in class and, they're really, testing you to see how, where you are. And I just wouldn't complete a test or just didn't have any interest in trying to learn. And my mom's like, you're not unintelligent. She's like, I think something's wrong. So we went to the doctor, and she told the doctor what happened or what's going on. And they were like, yeah, it sounds like ADHD. And they prescribed me medication, but that's it. That was it until recently. I've been on medicine since I was a kid, and I thought that was a solve-all until now.
Right.
So
right.
Whenever I became a mom, and I knew I was going to start working from home, I knew that, I had a baby during a pandemic, so I knew I wasn't sending her to daycare, so I knew I was going to have to work. I knew I was going to take care of her, and so I started, and I was severely, I know people with ADHD are more prone to depression and anxiety, and after I had her, I didn't know that. I knew I was depressed. I knew I had postpartum depression, but I wasn't quite sure why and all that. And I started researching, and I was like, oh my God, ADHD has something to do with that? My brain has something to do with that? And then it just started this avalanche of self-discovery and learning all of these things about ADHD that I had no idea explained so much about me. So I feel like whenever I became a mom, that was my second diagnosis. I really started to learn about myself and ADHD.
So when you were actually, right, sorry about that, go ahead.
No, that's it.
So when you were actually diagnosed, how did you feel? Was it a relief? Was it, yeah, I kind of knew that. What did you feel?
I was so young. I didn't, it was just, oh, okay, that's what I have, cool. I didn't matter. The doctor told me what was wrong and gave me a pill that made me sit still.
Gotcha.
It didn't bother me or didn't affect me. I was able to manage symptoms pretty well, even through college, which, a lot of people start having issues when they have to move out and live on their own.
Right.
But I was able to manage, got it through. And it wasn't until I became a mom that I really started to have to deal with the other issues that come with ADHD.
So we're going to get a little bit more into that. But the question that I have is, so they said they just gave you just took the pill, but you didn't have anything else in place, any strategies, no IEPs, no anything. It was just, that was pretty much it.
That's it. And I didn't even know there were other coping mechanisms. I didn't know there were tips. I didn't know there were ways to manage. I had no idea. They told me this was what's wrong with me, They gave me the medicine, and I just went about my life.
Wow.
So I know that's not the case for everybody, but I wasn't educated on what it is to have ADHD. But also keep in mind, my diagnosis came in, the late 90s. So things have changed a lot.
That is true. Yeah, it's amazing because, my understanding is this has been really, researched for a very long time. And this is one of the areas that people know a lot about, but it's not discussed a lot. So when I say people, I mean the experts, the doctors, some of the doctors, but there is still not enough information that's being put out to the audience, the ones who are diagnosed as ADHD. So you're right. I mean, not until recently, not until people have really been talking about it, people just don't know about it. So tell me, so now you are a mom and you were talking a little bit about that. And so tell us a little bit more about that. What changed in you? What key factors said, wow, this is really affecting me. My ADHD has really affected me. What are some of those things that you recognize that were different than as you were growing up?
I would say whenever I the very first thing that I made the connection that I always thought just ADHD was just attention. I didn't realize that it affected my mood. It affected what I thought was my personality. Those weird things you do as a kid, you look back and you're like, oh, that's not what other people do. Like, that's because my brain is differently, and I'm more, I've always been very prone to anxiety and all of these things. It really triggered whenever I've never been depressed before, but so I had postpartum depression after I had the baby. Mm-hmm. And after I started researching about that, I learned that I was super prone to it because mm-hmm. of my ADHD.
Gotcha.
And that just started, I just kept digging and digging and digging and started realizing all of these things about myself that I never understood. I just thought I was different. I just thought I was just, a little off. And now I know, my brain is actually different. It's not just I'm weird. It's my brain is weird.
Yeah. It makes sense. It makes sense.
And so becoming a mother is what started all of this.
Okay.
Because I needed some answers, and I needed to learn how to manage my time. I needed to learn how to manage being a mom, working, and myself. So every day, I'm learning. Every day I'm learning to manage, and it's changing because my baby's changing and my baby's schedule changes. So I'm constantly changing, but we've been making it work. So.
And how old is your little one?
She'll be 8 months in a week, 2 weeks. So little.
Yes, I can completely understand that. So, what is your message to parents who are going through the same situations that you are? So they are ADHDers, they've known it all their life, and now they have these little ones, and it's like, wait a minute, what's going on? I mean, what is your thought process or your tips for parents who are struggling with this?
I would say I managed my whole life with ADHD, and I was okay. And, it wasn't a huge deal as long as I was on my medicine, but I also didn't have a ton of external factors working against my medication as a baby, where you get sleep deprived, you no longer can take care of yourself, no longer you first. So I would say to anyone that's ADHD that is having a child or going to have a child is educate yourself. Educate yourself on the ADHD, how it'll affect you, how it'll affect you raising your child. Because if you know the way your brain works beforehand, it'll be a lot easier to tackle each problem, circumstance, issue, if you know how your brain is going to work it out. Mm. But I just feel like educating yourself, research everything you can, really make that something you hyper-focus on, is learning about yourself, because that's so important. And I mean, even if you don't have kids, it'll help you in your relationships and just understanding how your ADHD brain works. That's the one thing that I wish I would have known years ago. I'm wondering how much easier my life would have been years ago if I had learned why I do things instead of just, it's fine.
Right.
I'm making it through.
So is there anything else that you would do differently, knowing what you know?
I might have sought help, like seeing like a therapist or someone, a coach or someone who specializes in ADHD.
Okay.
I think that probably would have been extremely helpful, when I was younger, especially going through college and getting my first job and all of that, big life changes. I think it would have been helpful if I had asked for help, but I didn't know I could ask for help. Like, I just thought ADHD was just a thing. I didn't know there were coaches. I didn't know there were, tools to help me. I had no idea. So again, educate yourself. Like, it will make your life easier.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So is there any other tips that we may not have talked about that you can share with parents?
I will say just what's been working for me is I schedule my days the day before. And I have a baby, so, it's never exactly as planned, but, at this age, she's about on a 2-hour schedule. So I know she's away for 2 hours, so that's the 2 hours I get to play. Or it's the 2 hours, I'll have something for her to do while I try and work or pick up the house. But then those 2 hours that she's asleep, those are the hours I work. So don't get frustrated whenever your kid doesn't fit into your schedule. You kind of have to work with them, because I know how hard it is to start and stop, but I mean, you got to make it work. So scheduling, planning out your day is the best tip I can give.
Yeah, that's very helpful. And I've done a lot of that in terms of, whether it's in my calendar and in alerts me, because there's another thing is trying to find something that helps you remember. Because sometimes I'll make that schedule on paper and I'm like, man, I just missed 2 minutes, right? I'm like, what?
I have a timer for myself. So I'm like, okay. And if I have to set her down, in the bouncer for a few minutes, I'll give her 10 minutes here, and then I can do 10 minutes of work, and then I stop. And then I go get her and do whatever, and then it's 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, which I know that sounds crazy to some people, but that's the only thing that has helped me keep my job, really, and continue to be able to work from home with my child.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to talk a little bit about your blog. So we were talking a little bit about that before we started taping. So tell the audience a little bit about that.
Whenever I started my Instagram page where you found me and my blog, I really just wanted to talk about mental health issues, mostly about ADHD because that's what I have. But I talk about all mental health issues, and I want it to become more of a everyday topic. It doesn't have to be something taboo. It doesn't have to be something crazy, a terrible story. I try to make it a discussion of everyday life. I talk about how my ADHD plays into my day, and it's just a normal conversation, but it's also raising awareness and making it a less taboo topic publicly.
So, as you were growing up with ADHD and, when it got to the point that people are starting to talk about it, because one of the things you were saying is that you are really open about having ADHD. So once you got to that point, did you feel any pushback? Did you feel support? I mean, what type of response did you get?
I haven't gotten any negative response yet. I still have a very small following, so I've only received support. But as I'm starting to learn things about myself, I have, I'm married, and my husband's a very type A personality, so that's a whole different struggle.
Right.
Me married to a type A, but he, I'll tell him, I'm like, oh, this is because my ADHD, and he's having a hard time understanding, why can't you just fix that? you know? So that has been probably the only difficult, but he's supportive. He's extremely supportive. That's been the only questioning of what I have to say that I've gotten, is my husband being like, "Are you sure you just can't pick up after yourself?" So, but other than that, I haven't had any issues.
You know, it's so funny, but it's so true. And I've heard that from some parents where it really wasn't until they had children that had ADHD that they really got it. It really clicked. And it's like, oh, now this is what my wife or husband was going through. Now I understand it, right?
Maybe that'll happen. I don't know, but we'll see.
It's just too funny. It's too funny. So I just wanted to ask, is there any type of resources like books or YouTube channels, anything that, you know, has helped you that you could recommend?
Okay, so I have ADHD, and I know the previous people you've had on recommend all these books and stuff. I haven't read any books, but one of my favorite things to do in the morning is I signed up for the ADD mag. I think it's addmag.com.
Yeah. Yep.
And they send bite-sized chunks of information every day. You know, it's like a few paragraphs, and if something catches my eye, I'll read it, and then I'll start Googling on that topic. But that's about as much of a resource as I was willing to say that I have, is because I haven't read books. I don't have the time to read books or the attention.
Not everybody does. Don't feel bad.
Right. So,
and that's why they have like books on tape.
Yes, that's what I need. If I could get myself to pay attention the whole time before my mind wanders. But I like that because it's good for ADD people, because it's like bite-sized information. You know, like you can read a paragraph in just a few minutes. Like, it's okay.
Exactly.
So that is my favorite resource.
That is awesome. So if people wanted to reach out to you, had any questions, or just wanted to get some more information, how can they reach you? What is your Instagram, and is there any other areas or social media that they can reach you on?
They can find me on Instagram. My handle is meg.diaries. I answer all my messages, and then I also have an email address they can reach me at. It's megdiaries@google. So I'm open. I'm totally willing to talk about anything. If anybody wants to talk about something, I'm an open book. That's my whole mission, is to bring awareness to these things that haven't been talked about.
That's very good. Before we do our last closing thought, you know, one of the things is that people struggle with, or parents struggle with, is their children. Obviously, yours is 8 months, so you don't know either way. But just in general, as someone who has dealt with ADHD, if they just found out that their child is ADHD and just don't know what next steps to take, for someone who's experienced it, what would you recommend to them?
Be patient. Be patient, be kind, and try and be understanding. Not every case is the same. You might have a totally different off-the-wall kid that has nothing to do with what you thought ADHD was. Just be patient and take your time, do your research, like educate yourself. That's my best piece of advice, is just learn, because it becomes so much easier to become sympathetic if you understand why someone's doing something that they're doing.
Makes perfect sense. So any last minute closing thoughts, anything that you would like to share with the audience?
Just, if you have ADHD, I feel for you. It's okay. You can make it. I'm doing it. We all can do it. And if you have a kid with ADHD, they're going to turn out fine. So that's just, it's not into the world. It's okay. Everything's going to be okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Meg. So I thank you so much for your time. And I'm very pleased that we had a chance to meet and chat. I love your postings. They're very cool. So thank you. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.